Hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast with me, Mike Bedford. My guest today, Isaac Harvey, is a real star in space of disability and accessibility and inclusion and belonging. He's always doing something and going somewhere, raising the bar in this space as well. So he's definitely someone I've been keeping an eye on for a while, and someone I wanted to bring on to this podcast because I just think Isaac's got so much value to add, and I think will bring so much value to you, the listener. But this podcast is exactly that. It's a conversation. Me and Isaac's had some kind of like preamble before we came in. We had a bit of a chat, and I told him about what's what with the podcast, and said, look, I'm not going to give you scripted questions and things. I'm going to ask you. It's not about that. It's about just an authentic conversation between two guys in this instance, talking about lots of things, including disability, including maybe neurodiversity and inclusion and belonging, and what else we might get into as well. But yeah, we'll go where the conversation takes us, and I think that'll make a much better listening experience for you, the listener, as well. But that's me rambling on for absolutely ages there. The longest introduction ever to a podcast. I can hear Isaac laughing away there in the background. If you can't see him, you can hear him. But let me introduce you to today's superstar guest today, Isaac Harvey. Isaac, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, it's great to be here, and I'm looking forward to another one of our conversations because we definitely do go down the rabbit hole when we start talking.
That's nothing new for me going down rabbit holes, Isaac. I have to warn you, I can talk a lot and go down many different rabbit holes all in the same conversation. So if you find that we're kind of going down too many rabbit holes, then let me know that we might need to come back to the center rabbit hole at some point as well, because I'm always mindful that, especially if I'm talking to someone who might not kind of follow as many rabbits as I'm following in my head, and that can be a little bit confusing for people. It kind of feels like it's there's too many rabbits running around and going down lots of different holes, and kind of say, hang on a minute, Mike, what were we talking about? It's all good for the benefit of our listeners, some who may not have heard of you. Tell us a little bit about you. Who is Isaac Harvey, and what does he do?
Gosh, that is a big question, and as we talk about rabbit holes, I could take this in so many different directions of who is Isaac Harvey. But I guess I'll start from the beginning. So I'm Isaac. I was born with a disability called limb pelvic hypoplasia, which means I have no arms or legs, have a weak pelvis, so I'm not able to walk, but I have a wheelchair which gets me from A to B. I've also got scoliosis, which is the curvature of the spine, but that's been corrected by metalwork. And on top of all of that, I have acid reflux, which is stomach problems. But even with all of those obstacles that I have, I've still been able to achieve great things, get out there and really use my voice and show people what can be done, even if you do have a disability. That's mainly thanks to my friends and family who have, because of my upbringing, have always supported me and never really treated me any differently. So when I've said, oh, I want to do a skydive or go skiing, they've never said, no, you're not able to do that. They feel like if it's out there and can be done, then why not? And I've always pushed me to go out there and achieve, which has definitely helped when it comes to overcoming obstacles with my disability. But the challenging part of my life was my mental health. Even though I was able to do all of these things internally, I wasn't exactly happy, and I couldn't really understand why. So I started looking at external factors to see if that would help with my life internally. So thinking that I needed to be in a relationship for happiness. Finally got into one and I still wasn't happy. Being seen as this inspirational, motivational figure in the world, and thinking like, I can't really talk about this openly because I don't want to be seen as a disappointment. And also it was something that I thought I was dealing with, so I never really opened up about it. And also being a video editor and content creator at the start of the journey of that, I wanted to, I guess you could say, become this influencer, because I just love being creative and doing that. But that didn't really work out. So all those three factors kind of came together and got me to a bit of a breaking point where I was like, okay, I really need to learn about myself and my well-being. So for the first time in my life, I took a step back. I must have been 24, 25 at this time. Took a step back and started learning about mental health and mindset. And that's where I came across the law of attraction and how we think, feel, and speak is the reality we create. And once I had that kind of view and being able to take a step back and have that self-awareness was when my eyes opened up to the wider world, and then realizing that my disability has always been my biggest strength, and that's what's got me out there doing all of the different things that you see me doing on LinkedIn, and allowed me to have this conversation with you. So it's all come together.
I really love the way you talked about reframing mindset there. I think it's really important, isn't it, as well, to turn situations around into positives. But that's not an easy thing to do, is it? Because often we can find, particularly when you're disabled, whether that's physically disabled, whether that's invisible, whether that's visible, you can find that there's so many things that get in the way, isn't there? Of kind of, even if you kind of come into this with such a positive mindset, something can kind of just get in your way, and you just kind of, it can set you back. So how does that kind of play out in your daily kind of routines? And I've often heard it said that it's society that disables us, and how do we get around that from a positive mindset perspective when actually there's so many things out there that just get in our way?
So I would like to say, so I see it as being positive, but the way I kind of see it is like I have a realistic mindset preparing me for any situation. Through this journey with my mental health, I was learning about the law of attraction and the importance of meditation and having this, as you say, positive mindset. And I did a lot of this, and I was really fascinated by all of it for a whole year of doing this. And the more I was doing it, the more I was learning, the more I felt like, okay, I'm feeling a lot better in myself. So a year went by, and I thought, okay, I'm at a place now where I don't need to do any more learning. I don't need to do any more meditation. I get it now. I don't need to do any more of this. And within 2 weeks, I was back to square one again, feeling really
Right.
down and upset and really confused, as in like, I've learned all this for a whole year. How can I be back to square
Mm,
one again? And that's when I realized it's a journey rather than an end destination. And to have a bit more of a realistic mindset has allowed me to prepare myself for good and bad, because life's a roller coaster. You're always going to get good and bad, but being able to take a step back and have a different perspective on it, I think that's allowed me to have a more focused mind, and
yeah,
one that sees the silver linings in things. With anything, as we said before we started recording, some of everything happens for a reason. But
yeah,
the way we see it, um, and how some things may be a learning experience, or um, that person in on that day who said a certain thing to me was of the internal feelings that I was feeling, and that was needed to come out. It's yeah, being able to just take a step back and have that self-awareness about
yeah.
everyday situations has definitely helped me day to day in having this mindset.
I think you're right. I think it's so important to be able to reflect, isn't it? And to be able to stand back and be able to self-reflect on things that have happened, and use that as a learning opportunity for yourself, for your own self-growth, continuous self-growth. Because from speaking to you, Isaac, I know you're someone who's constantly striving to learn and seeking out new opportunities to learn from the widest possible diverse groups of people and opportunities. We were just talking, funnily enough, weren't we, again before you came on the podcast, about how I was both impressed and a little bit envious to kind of see that you'd been along to what felt like to me was kind of networking meetup group for neurodivergent people. What sort of things do you get involved in then, Isaac, in terms of all the different groups and things that you do?
How do I get myself involved in everything I do? So again, going back to getting into this advocacy role, when I left school, I knew that I didn't want to do the 9 to 5. And as I said, I've always had a creative mind. So I wanted to express that through video and the things that I would get up to. And when I was doing these videos, I never really spoke about disability, even though I was showcasing what can be done with a disability. I never really
Mm,
spoke about it at the forefront of the videos. Loads of friends and family were like, "Oh, you should really talk about disability in
mm,
the videos. You could really change people's perspectives on things." And I thought, oh, why do I have to do that for? It doesn't really make any sense, you know. I just want to be
mm,
creative. I want to make some fun videos. So friends and family kept telling me, I kept on ignoring them until
mm,
I was given an opportunity to do a public speaking engagement up in Birmingham, talking about different obstacles that I face, how I may have to plan things way in advance, or I may need assistance to do certain activities. But once that's all done, I still am able to do the adventurous things that I do. And I remember finishing that public speaking engagement. It's probably one of the first that I just clearly has a point in, that's made a point in my head, um, where once I finished, a woman came up to me and she said, "Oh, I get severe legs in my so I get severe pains in my legs, and I'm always complaining about life, but after hearing your story, it's really changed my perspective on things." And that was kind of the first time I felt or known about the impact I was making on people. So that's when I started implementing that into my videos. And then for my advocacy work and being a bit more outspoken was when I joined LinkedIn in 2021.
mm.
Again, a platform that was always advertised to me as the professional Facebook. And I was like, well, why do I need to have another Facebook for,
Yeah,
especially if it's professional, you know?
yeah, yeah,
And yeah, I started off sharing what the work I do with wheels and wheelchairs. So a little context about that. That's
yeah.
roller skaters pushing wheelchair users. And I thought, okay, it'd be good to get maybe professional eyes on what we do, because we'd been on other social medias, but LinkedIn might be a place for us to get sponsors and other bits and pieces there. And it was so I started off posting about that for a couple of months, and then July came round, and that's when I learnt about Disability Pride Month, a month I'd never really heard of
Mm,
before. And I was like fascinated by it, that I wrote a post about it from my own experience, saying, "Oh, it's just great that we're able to celebrate disability in this way." And it went, I guess you could say, semi-viral, where I guess I felt like I'd been given a voice to the community, and people were accepting to hear it. And that's when I started being more of an advocate, talking about the different things I do. And that's when I got to connect with so many within the disability community. Um, who I've been able to learn so much from, and being able to go to different events, such as the one that happened this week. So a non-profit organization called Joyfully Different is supports neurodiverse entrepreneurs, um, and allows people to come together so they can uh, basically do things differently, that works for different individuals, and so that they have the support. And they had a networking event in Reigate. It was yeah, solely for neurodiverse, but I was invited by one of my friends who has ADHD, and he was saying, "Oh, it would be great for you to come and support." And I said, "Yeah, absolutely," because I'm all about learning and growing in this space and community. And I was literally blown away when I entered the room and I was greeted by these color coded cards, where each card had a different color and they meant different things. So red meant you don't, so these were like social cues as well,
yeah.
so for people to know, and people's energies and communication. So red meant, I don't wish to be approached, but I'm happy to be part of the conversation. Orange meant you can approach me, but I may not answer you. And then green meant you can approach me and I'll be willing to speak back. And I thought, I don't see myself as neurodiverse, or can't think of the words now. I don't identify myself as neurodiverse.
On the
Um,
spectrum.
Yes, yeah. And I've even myself, my social battery goes in certain spaces.
Yeah.
And, usually in these, when it comes to networking, you feel like you have to keep talking. And
Mm,
if you walk away, it's really awkward, or sorry, I don't feel like talking. You just feel a bit awkward. But having
yeah.
these social cards, colored coded cards, I feel breaks that barrier, and then people
Yeah,
know from the get-go, okay, I won't speak to you now, or this person will be happy to speak, you know. I think
yeah,
it
yeah,
was such a barrier breaking, and that it was structured, so it wasn't that awkward small talk, or they
yeah.
had arts and craft table, and they had fidget spinners, and yeah, just stuff for everybody to feel like comfortable in that setting. And I thought it was amazing, and more networking need to get on board and implement that into other events.
That sounds absolutely awesome. When we often think about accessibility and inclusion, we tend to like pigeonhole it, don't we, to kind of like certain people or certain characteristics and disabilities and whatnot. When actually, what we should be thinking about is actually there's so many people that can benefit from just by being more inclusive, right? You know, 'cause inclusion benefits everybody. It doesn't just benefit one or two people, right? It just makes things better for everybody. And by like you
Mm.
just said there, you know, you might not necessarily identify in your case, Isaac, as being neurodivergent, but you certainly found some things there that you thought actually this is really good, and I can see the benefits in doing this too. So therefore, you know, inclusion is benefiting a wider audience as well, isn't it? I think it's just about how we learn to adapt the conversation around what inclusion and accessibility means, right?
Absolutely. Because they say once you design for one, you're basically designing for all, like ones who may have more needs or adjustments in place. Once you design it for that one person, you usually find that it's helping a lot of other people. As we said again off air, we said a lot off air, by the way.
we, we,
Yes.
we did,
Yeah, once, so like for example, a ramp up into automatic door into a building, everyone benefits into those kind of spaces. It's
yeah,
not just myself. People who may have deliveries with the holding loads of parcels benefits from that, or children with buggies benefit from that.
mm, yeah,
It's all of these different benefits people have from having something accessible, and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
yeah, really, yeah, as you say, inclusion is for everybody. Everyone benefits.
I couldn't agree more. And one of the things I often talk about, being as someone who works pretty extensively in neurodiversity in the workplace, is around, you know, whenever we're designing anything, design for the 100. Don't design for the 10% or the 20% or the 30%, whatever. Design for the 100%. You know, use universal design principles to make sure that it benefits everybody always. That way, you're just creating better spaces, better places where everyone can thrive, regardless of how they identify or what the challenges or needs are. It's about and just creating spaces where everyone can thrive and be the best, surely.
Absolutely. Yes. 'Cause it reminds me of the video which came up. It was World Down Syndrome Day. I don't know if you saw that
Oh,
video
yeah.
that I
Yeah, yeah,
posted, because that was just such a powerful video and could be used way beyond just Down syndrome, just every
yeah,
disability, anyone really. I think that was a video that was targeting everyone, because
yeah,
it was, so basically the premise of the video was, if you assume I can't do something, then that's what's going to happen. But if you
yeah,
assume that I can achieve more, then I probably will achieve more.
yeah,
And that's why, we should change assumptions, but also, there's a bit of I'm on the fence about assumptions, because on one side, assumptions can be quite dangerous if you don't speak to the individual.
yeah. I was gonna say that. Yeah,
But also assuming positively, I think should be more out there. But I feel like more open dialogue of, actually, what can we put in place for you so that you can be at your best? Woods is
yeah.
much better than thinking, oh, he's in a wheelchair, he's not going to be able to do this, this, and this. It's kind of like seeing what can be done rather than what can't be done.
You've just reminded me of that video, which was brilliant, by the way. That went
Mm,
viral, didn't it? That video with the Downs lady. You know, obviously being such a fantastic person that could do so much, but obviously all the assumptions were made that she couldn't, and was treated basically like a child. You know, which was a load of nonsense. I think I agree with you, Isaac, on this. I'm a little bit on the fence about kind of the whole assumptions thing, because I think it can get quite muddy when you make assumptions. So I think for me, I don't know what your thoughts are. I'll ask you anyway, but I much prefer ask rather than assume. If you're not sure about anything, ask someone. And because we're all, the thing that worries me about assumptions is because we're all so unique individuals, we all have so many different things going on that it kind of can get quite sort of broad brushy. I think when you go down the assumptions kind of route, I think, but when you ask the person concerned, then there can't be really any kind of misinterpretation or ambiguity about that. If you're asking directly from the horse's mouth, so to speak, then that person's telling you exactly, what they need, what they want from you in order to be able to thrive. I don't know about you again, but one of the things I feel often lacks is actually the questions being asked in the
Mm.
first place. And, there could be multiple reasons for why people don't ask the questions. I mean, that could be fear. There could be a fear element there, fear of kind of saying or doing the wrong thing. So therefore the question doesn't get asked. Therefore people make assumptions. But the problem with assumptions is assumptions can be wrong. I think
Yeah.
that's what worries me about assumptions. I don't know, I'm rambling a little bit there, but what do you think? What's your thoughts on all that?
Basically, in this world, if you don't know, you don't know, and that's like a
Yeah.
fact. Not
Yeah.
everyone knows everything, and I do believe that people should ask more questions, um, as as long as they're well intended,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you are willing to learn and want to learn. But I also think it goes beyond that.
Yeah.
And again, it's down to choice as well. But we have some people in any community who feel like, oh no, you shouldn't be asking questions, but then also are the same people who complain that people aren't getting it right. And it's like you
Yeah.
can't have it both ways.
True.
Obviously, look, if someone says, oh, can you tell me about your medical history? Then of course you don't have to answer that. But if
No.
someone says, how can I support you? Or yeah, if how can I support you?
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
I feel like it should be a two-way street. We
Yeah.
should be able to answer the question,
Yeah.
however detailed or not that you want to, and then for the other person to learn from it and kind of implement it in whatever role that they may have.
Yeah.
I feel like this way of real learning has got to be a two-way street, but also realizing that people have a choice of answering or not. But
Yeah.
again, choice as in what you say or not, then you can't complain if you don't say something and then someone gets it wrong.
No, I think you make some really good points there. I think you're absolutely spot on. I think questions have to come from a position of positive intent first and foremost. That's
Mm,
absolutely paramount. I work quite a lot in coaching space, and there's a word that gets thrown around quite a bit in coaching space, which is unconditional positive regard. I don't know if you, our listeners, are familiar with that, but essentially what that is it's always coming to a conversation with anybody from a complete space of treating the person as a complete blank canvas, having no preconceptions, having no bias whatsoever, just completely blank canvas conversation with that person and treating it from a really positive perspective, then asking you questions. So you've got no preconceived ideas about what that's going to be, what that person's going to need, what that person's going to say. It's about ultimately listening to that person positively and asking the right questions to be able to support that person in terms of whatever it is that they need. So, for example, if I'm a manager in the workplace and I'm working with people who might have communication challenges or communicate differently, then one of the questions I can ask is, what do you need from me in terms of how I communicate with you or how we communicate on the team? I think
mm,
that's a really, and again, like you said there, Isaac, it's up to the individual then as to how they want to answer that or whether they want to answer that. Obviously, if they don't, then things probably aren't going to change that much. But the
yes,
power
yeah,
then is in that person's gift to kind of, actually, I'm really glad that you've asked me that question because I'd much, and even if you think about the color coordinated cards things, that great example that you gave there about how includes, actually, what I think would be really good in this team if we introduce like a color coordinated card scheme for people who might actually have challenges around communication at certain times, don't need to be disturbed, or kind of, we can have an open signal to people when it is okay to talk to me or others and things like that. But if that question ain't asked, then those ideas don't ever come out. So we never know about those. So those don't get implemented.
cool.
So for me, that should always be from a positive intent perspective. But I think we're in agreement on this, and it's tell me if we're not, we shouldn't be afraid of the questions, asking the questions, but ultimately we should respect the other person's
Mm,
right to choose whether to answer that or not. But then accountability sits with them as to what change happens by not responding to that. Am I right in summarizing what we've captured there?
Yeah, basically, two-way street. It's definitely got to be seen as a two-way street, respecting both parties, basically. I just feel like that's how we become better allies, better at supporting each other, and
Yeah,
kind of striving for a more inclusive world if we kind of have that approach to things. I think it all boils down to respect at the end of the day.
yeah.
If we could just respect one another and actually and give people time to
Yeah.
speak. I think that's all that matters really. That's what being a good human being is about.
I often say, and you might find this in terms of the work that you do, a lot of what I say doesn't feel like it's rocket science. It feels like a lot of it comes down to being a good person and doing the right thing. But somehow, somewhere, that gets lost, and we forget how to engage with people on a human level. What do you think then, perhaps, some of the biggest challenges that people have around engaging in the conversation?
Oh, that's a good question. I feel like, again, what we speak about, some people just may not have the confidence to speak. And because of that, they just don't know how to engage, because, we live in a society with a lot of cancel culture. And the point of, oh gosh, what if I get this wrong? People are not going to like me for it. But I think it's human. We're not going to get it right first time, and we're not going to get it perfect. So I feel just kind of just putting your head in first and just asking the questions. I feel it's something that I do. Um,
Mm.
Obviously there's a time and place, like you don't just say anything at any given time, but I feel like for my own personal growth is just asking the questions and having conversations like these and really learning from each other, or just engaging in people's posts. Maybe you don't even have to ask a question, but just looking at the different people within the communities to be like, okay, I didn't know about that, so I've learned that now. Or maybe a comment asking a question, and then hopefully someone would respond with it. But I think it's just kind of, yeah, either observing and is a way of being part of a conversation, but also the main point of what we've been saying is asking questions and having that open dialogue. I think it's so important.
What do you think we can do then, even in the disabled, neurodivergent community and other communities where the challenge around the conversation exists? What can we do then to create, I guess, safety where people feel they can ask the questions? How can we better advocate that we want the questions to be asked? It is safe. Please ask us the questions. We're not afraid of the questions. Actually, we want to engage in a dialogue. What role do you think we have there to open that up?
I feel we have some responsibility of educating. Again, not everyone wants to be an educator, which is
Mm,
totally understandable. And I do respect that, because, I've met some people with disabilities who just don't want to advocate for disability, and they just want to get on and do work and be an
yeah.
actor or a teacher or whatever. And that's totally fine. But I feel those within the advocacy space should definitely be open for these kind of conversations and be able to see people's perspectives in different ways of seeing things, and as well as engaging with each other's content. I feel is kind of, if you come if so for like for me, if I came with an approach which was really negative and always complaining or always angry, which again is a valid feeling as well, because there's a
Mm,
lot of
mm,
frustrations with the obstacles that are
yeah.
faced in today's society. But if I only had that approach and I was very negative about things, then I wouldn't be surprised if anyone wanted to not engage with me then.
Mm,
So I think it's how we approach things, to making people feel comfortable in feeling like they can ask questions or wanting to engage in certain ways. So I think it's just got to be a bit balanced, because
mhm,
in my post I always try and have a balanced view, even if something really does frustrate me.
mm,
I do try and see it from both sides, or if I have an opinion, I try and open it up for others to give their views on it.
mm,
I'm never this person who says, "Oh, what I've said is right and that's it." I come from, this is my opinion. Now it's for you to make your own mind up about it, or I'd like to hear what you have to say.
yeah.
Showcasing what's out there. So I think it's got to be done from a balanced view.
No, you're right, and I'm learning again so much from our conversation as we're talking. I think it's the whole thread running through this is we're constantly learning, aren't we? And every
Mm,
conversation that we have, every dialogue that we have is a learning opportunity
mm.
for us to learn more about each other and to learn more about how we can support each other, and learn how we can do things differently. I wonder if you could share with us some examples of good and great examples of bad have been recently for you when you've been out and about on your travels and doing all the great work that you've been doing.
So Purple Tuesday is the first Tuesday in November, which gets businesses to do at least commit to one thing a year to make the disabled customer experience better. It's celebrated on that day in different countries across the world. And in London, we go on to the Piccadilly lights very early in the morning, which has just the whole Purple Tuesday on there, which is really cool. Just a very
Yeah,
early start. You have to be there at like 7:30 in the morning. Ridiculous time to be
yeah,
out and about in London. It's like really great, and people come together. And that was the day is very long, but it's a great chance for the community to come together and hear what businesses are doing to make customer experiences better within, the website. They may do a slight change in their website, or they are doing a roundtable with people with disabilities so they can know how to make their products better. All different types of things, which is great, and they have resources for companies to do better within that world for people with disabilities. And then the day after, I was collecting my MBE from King.
congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. From King Charles, and being able to, because for everything I do, I don't really do it for awards or recognition. Being able to, this mind has come over time, but I've now come to the realization that all of these awards and recognition is kind of like a reflection on what the community can do if they put their mind to it, and
Yeah,
showing what people with disabilities or neurodivergent individuals can achieve
yeah.
if we are given the right support, and we can really have our voices heard if we come collectively together. So as an award that's not just me, but collectively, I've learned so much from people. This is a collective award, the MVE.
Which is what I
And
love about
then,
you, Isaac. You're so humble.
I mean, if it was all about me, it would get to my head and all that, though, and we don't want that. No. Um, and then that same day, see, this was a crazy 24 hours. And that same day, I was going to the Disability Power 100 because I was on the top 100 list as well. So it was a crazy 24 hours. And that was kind of like a real high within the disability world. And a couple of days later, I was meant to be celebrating a friend's birthday in Cambridge. And I probably had one of the worst travel experiences that I've ever had.
Okay.
So everything was booked for me to get to Cambridge.
Yeah,
So I got on the train, and that was all fine. I mean, the first part of the journey was fine, and then once I got to Cambridge, no one was there with the ramp.
yeah,
Luckily it was the last station, and I didn't have to kind of like go on to other stations, which is one of my dreads when I can't get off the train.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then there's like a next station. But luckily this was the last stop. Some kind passengers found someone and said, oh, there's a wheelchair on. And they said, oh, did you let them know that you were coming? I said, did you tell the staff that you was coming here? And I said, yeah, of course. Well, they got me on. And they said, oh no, we didn't hear anything. So they got me off, and they were going to help me to the exit, to then find that the staff member who was helping me wasn't told that the lift was out to get to the exit.
yeah,
So he was like, okay, I'm not sure what we're going to do. So he said, okay, what we'll do is we'll get you on to the next station, where we'll get you a taxi back, which they have to do. I said, okay, that's fine. Then they found out that the trains that were going to their next station wouldn't have the right ramps for me to get there.
yeah.
So they
Gosh.
couldn't get me to the next station, which meant they had to get me onto another station further on. Yeah, it felt like I was in the Lake District at this point, but uh, I think it was Ely. It must have been Ely.
Quite some
So
way from where you want to be, basically.
yeah, so I eventually got to Ely. This is when I met my friend who was coming with me to the party. She was with me. We got to Ely. I think it was Ely. Got out fine. Got to the exit and found that the taxi didn't wait for me, and I'd left.
Um,
Then when calling the taxi company, they said, "Oh, you may have to wait an hour for another one to come back." And we're like, "This is ridiculous." I
yeah,
know that it's
yeah,
like two. This must be 2 hours in now. So
yeah,
then they said, okay, what we'll do is we'll get your train back to Cambridge, but this time they will redirect the train to go on the platform that allows you to get to the exit. Got back on the train, back to Cambridge, got out of the train. It wasn't even funny, but the lift had been fixed by the time I got back. Got out, said to the taxi people, wanted to get a taxi to the party, but my friend was like, because we're so late, we want to make sure we get back because we had to get home that same day.
yeah.
So spoke to the taxi driver. He said, "Yeah, I can get you there, but there's no guarantee I'm going to get you back, because even if you
Ooh,
order it, you have to still wait an hour from the time that you've ordered it, and there's no guarantee." So there was a bit of back and forward with that, and then it just got to a point now. It's like, you know what? There's no point getting so far and then realizing that we're not going to get home again.
yeah, yeah.
So we had to stay within the Cambridge station. So this was about 4 or 5 hours now. Went to a local restaurant, wanted to go back, and there was train delays and um, different things that were happening. And once I eventually got back to London, no one was there to meet me again.
No, no.
Yeah, so it was like within that 1 week of, the very high of disability and what can be achieved to the
Right.
reality, kind of like the reality sat back in. It was like, oh yeah, back to reality.
Yeah,
There's all of these obstacles. And I was on the news talking about it and the radio talking about what had happened. But yeah, all within the same week of a high and low, a week I won't
yeah.
forget.
That's just terrible and shouldn't be like that at all. And do you think that, you know, anything will change as a result of what happened? You shared your thoughts on that, and it kind of went as far as going on the news. Do you think people will listen and anything will change so that the experience don't happen to you or anyone else?
I see that, and again, it goes back to perspective. Now, throughout the whole situation, I was obviously frustrated that this is happening, but I wasn't angry. And the
Yeah,
reason I wasn't angry is because, for one, the staff who were trying to help me were as frustrated as I was, because they
yeah,
said this lift is always going out and we always have to deal with this. So they
yeah,
weren't very happy. So it's kind of like a shared frustration. But also, I wanted to. It's funny because for the first time when something like this was unfolding, I was like, okay, I'm not going to publicly mention anything about this. I want to
yeah,
see if I can sort something out. But my friend who had kind of like traveled me for the first time in this capacity was so angry. She was filming it on Instagram and doing all of
yeah,
these stories, and
yeah,
it
yeah,
was understandable. Like she was angry, like this was happening, and that got the attention of someone that she was connected with from ITV and
yeah,
Cambridge Radio to highlight issue. But yeah, I wanted to kind of direct my energy into positive change rather than, oh my gosh, this shouldn't be happening. I was like, luckily I've got this mindset, but for some people, and this was worried about, is some people, they may never want to travel again. And that's
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
worst thing you want to hear or see people who see something like this, just like, oh, I better not, I can't travel because I may get stuck on the train. Or when it comes to
yeah,
flying, it's like, oh, I don't know if my chair's going to break. And that's the
yeah,
worst
yeah,
thing I don't like hearing, because
yeah,
there's such a vast world out there. And for most of the time, it goes very well. It's just
yeah,
when it goes wrong, it goes very wrong.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
kind of channeling it to like positive change,
Yeah.
and it just brought more awareness to people, which is good too.
I think you're right. As we mentioned earlier, you said how you can lay that back, whether that's from that position of anger or whether it's, which is rightly so, as you say, it's a right, or whether that's that growth mindset, positive approach towards this. Who's going to engage, which which is the other party going to engage with more, the positive growth perspective or the anger. I think people are going to be more likely to engage with yourself with that kind of mindset to create positive change than they are if someone's going to get quite defensive, and it's going to be harder to make change and for people to listen and understand. Whereas if you're actually coming at it from that positive perspective, people are more likely to engage and
Mm.
what, you're right, we need to do something about this and make changes, right? I think that's
Absolutely.
but that's not an easy thing to do either.
Especially if you're in that situation at the time it's happening, it can be a lot a lot of emotions and things to deal with. Mm.
Yeah, no,
But yeah,
sure.
and don't get me wrong, like you said, anger has made some real changes to people's lives and
Yeah,
perspectives. I feel anger's an emotion that is very valid to every other emotion. I just feel it's how you portray that anger.
yeah,
Because if you're just going to be shouting and screaming, where you're not well, it depends if the person's worth listening to. But I was gonna say,
yeah,
if you're just shouting and screaming without any dialogue, I think that's when people shut off and don't want to engage.
yeah,
So I think it's just how you kind of channel that anger or the frustration or the sadness or the um all these different emotions, how you channel it is the most important. So what am I really gonna get out of this by being
yeah,
angry, and how can I make change so it doesn't happen again?
yeah.
Or
No,
teaching moment.
I think you're spot on. I think it's a really great reflection. Tell us about a really positive experience that you've had then recently.
I mean, I could talk about what will be a positive experience. I could talk about happening
Yeah,
this year.
yeah, yeah. Go for it.
So yeah, so as I mentioned very briefly, so I'm president of an organization called Wheels and Wheelchairs, where roller skaters push wheelchair users, and we go out on a weekly basis around London skating with groups. On a Saturday in Battersea Park with a small group, and then on Sundays we go on the streets of London, and it's really great fun, and it's a community that I've felt really included in, because it's one of those events that we've all come from like different backgrounds, but we all just come to have fun. And it's also another thing that I've realized from the get-go is, you know, I'm in a wheelchair and they're on skates. If the surface is bad, we all suffer. If it's great, we all have a good time.
Yeah,
So it's really a great collective event. And we're doing a huge challenge happening in August this year, where we're going to be doing a challenge skating from Brighton all the way to Paris for the start of
wow,
the Paralympic Games. Uh,
amazing.
and it's a very special skate because 12 years ago, when Wheels and Wheelchairs started, a French group doing similar activities challenged themselves to skate from Paris to London for the start of the Paralympic Games here. So
Yeah,
now everything's coming full circle, where we're now skating there.
yeah, yeah,
And we're going to have a minimum of 40 skaters. We're planning to have at least 7 to 8 wheelchair users, a lot of crew to support. And yeah, it's a 4-day challenge, but I feel it'd be very rewarding
yeah,
at the end of it, and how we can do something collectively and hopefully kind of create a big impact of like that collectiveness thing we've been speaking about throughout this whole
yeah, yeah.
conversation, kind of just showing what happens when all forces come together and what we're able to achieve. I think that'd be really cool and a very memorable moment. I know it's not happened yet, but I think it's gonna be something that is gonna go down in history.
Oh, amazing. Thank you for sharing any information that you've got on that, Isaac. Anything that we can promote and put in the podcast links or share. More than happy to do that. I think you've touched on a really good point about the collectiveness, and that's how we progress this conversation as well. It's collectively, together we progress, don't we? Right. It's our differences that unite us, isn't it, rather than divide us. I think
Absolutely.
that's a really nice way I'd like to kind of share conversation today. I think this conversation has been so valuable, and I've learned so much from this conversation, and I hope our listeners have too. Any final thoughts, Isaac? Any final messages or thoughts for our listeners?
I feel with this conversation, it just shows, everyone has a story. And I think everyone should value their own stories and know that people are there to listen to you in any capacity, and just be you, because who else is going to do it for you?
Yeah, fantastic way to close out the show, Isaac. Thank you so much for sharing everything with us today and for being
Awesome.
such a valued guest on the podcast. I've really enjoyed getting to know you and talking to you both before and on the podcast. I look forward to being connected and having many more conversations with you. If people want to connect with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, so I mean, I am on all social medias, but LinkedIn is the place where people can follow me. I post there on a regular basis, talking about the different things that I get up to and the different collaborations that I'm a part of. And yeah, happy to connect on there.
Brilliant. And I'll post links again to Isaac's LinkedIn profile in the show notes, and recommend people do take Isaac up on that kind of and connect with him as well, because you've got a lot to learn from what Isaac does, and what Isaac says is always worth listening to. So once again, Isaac, thank you so much for being a guest. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Yes, no, thank you so much for having me. I love a good conversation, and especially if someone can take something away from it as well, I think it's really important. And yeah, maybe we'll have to do a part two because there's so much more to talk about.
It feels like it. It feels like there's probably much more to come. Watch this space, I'd say,
Absolutely.
on that one. There may be a sequel. So yeah, once again, thanks so much to Isaac, and thanks you so much to our listeners as well who have joined in and tuned in and listening to us. And if you're enjoying the podcast, don't forget to like and to subscribe to the podcast so you can be kept up to date with all the latest episodes and goings on. And thank you for joining us, and take care, and bye for now.